College football nerds here to do a model-only quick hitter discussion of Iowa and Wisconsin. We did a ton of content this week, and it is super late. And thanks to daylight savings time, I've been up since 4:30 this morning. But we wanted to get this one out there because it's an important ranked matchup, and the data might tell us something interesting. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh, and he's even going to close this one out, which is rare for him. I'm going to turn it over to Josh and let him run with the model, and y'all can let us know in the comments who you think is going to win this one. Thanks, y'all.
As Daniel said, we were hoping to maybe do a little more, but frankly, it's after midnight, and Daniel has been running for I think almost 20 hours at this point. Doing a model, we do our per play model, so we look at your per play stats versus the teams you played, how they did against everyone else, build a relational idea for the strength of your team, try to project against this opponent and this opponent's strengths and weaknesses what your yardage and sort of production are going to look like. Then use that and compare it against how you've done in the past. So based on historical data, if we had this kind of production, what does that look like in terms of points? And it's not just like points per yard. We're actually looking at your team with the idea that there's certain thresholds and things that you need to do to get certain point totals. And if you don't get certain production from your offense, if you can't cross like a certain passing threshold, then things start to break down. And the model generates that all itself. Not actually the most sophisticated thing in the world, but it's been fairly effective at giving you a baseline of what happens when these two teams play each other and they both give their B-plus games. What is your expectation based just purely on what you've done this year? So looking at that, the first thing we do is we generate this intermediary statistic called percentage of opponent averages allowed. So if your opponent's average 4 yards per carry, you allow 3, you allow 75% of their averages. The whole point here is to get a purely adjusted version of your offense and your defense. So if we know that your defense allows, for example, in Iowa's case, 3 yards per carry, that's great. And that sounds absolutely phenomenal. But I can tell you that that is 80% of opponent averages. Their opponents only average 3.8 yards per carry. That's really painfully bad. So if you were to take 3.84 yards per carry and you were to project it onto all of college football, 3.8 yards per carry as an average is only, scrolling down here, that'd be about 92nd in the country. 92nd in the country being, by the way, that is Iowa's actual average. It's kind of fascinating. So the Iowa's opponents, I had to do a double take. Iowa's opponents actually average the same yard per carry average that Iowa averages. And Iowa, by the way, not really good in average at 92. And that kind of gets into the second part of the point. When Iowa averages 82% run and pass, that means you're, I would say, very good against the run, not necessarily elite, and very good against the pass, not necessarily elite. I'd like to see those numbers below 80% for both if you want me to call them elite. Closer in the pass than the run, hard to hold teams below their passing average, but it's nothing compared to Wisconsin. 64% of rushing averages, 73% of passing averages. Those are elite in both statistics. Some teams have lower rush numbers. Penn State is below 60% right now, but that pass number, anything below 75% is awesome. And when you're a team like Iowa that's averaging something like 3.8 yards per carry, and then you face a team that's only allowing 64% of their averages, you should only have about 2.4 yards per carry, which is what we're seeing here. Wisconsin has struggled in run games against good run defenses. They're going to struggle a little bit here is the model's projection at 3.9 yards per carry, but that's a lot closer to that 4.5 yard proficiency metric than you're going to get from Iowa. And the passing game, again, none of these teams expected to be explosive by any means. 5.3 yards per attempt and 6.6. But again, a little more production from Wisconsin. And this leads into the general point that the model often sees. If your number is falling below a certain threshold, often 4 yards per play, your offense tends to stall or shut down. And Iowa in this game is expected to only have 3.83 yards per play. 3.83 yards per play is not enough to function. Wisconsin at 4.9 is not a great number. Okay, so 4.9 yards per play for Wisconsin. That number, looking at like just sort of past games to give you an example, that's Wisconsin's average in, I don't know, something like worse than they did against Illinois, better than they did against Northwestern, really in between the two. There's no clean example, but really halfway between that Northwestern and Illinois game. Those were 23 and 24 point games. So that's where the model's guessing they're going to score right about 20 points. where Iowa, with that number at 3.83, quite frankly, that's just non-functional. And it's guessing 8 points. It's really similar to the production that Iowa got against Michigan, and that's not a good thing. So this model is predicted to be 20-8. Basically, a Wisconsin offense that is not operating well, but is moving the ball well enough to score some points, and quite frankly, an Iowa offense that is not expected to function. That's a 28-8 score, and what will probably be a very ugly game, to no one's surprise, basically due to the fact that Iowa's defense is quite good, but not necessarily elite in our model's view, whereas Wisconsin is an elite defense facing an offense that's had some struggles, and it should be able to shut them down. Personally, looking at these statistics, I think the model is pretty reasonable. I would have this game 24-3, and the reason for it being, I just don't think Iowa moves the ball. Maybe they get some point, they get in field goal range. Maybe they score, maybe they don't. Now, we say all the time, if you're below 20 points, things can get weird. But I do think Wisconsin just barely breaks that 20-point threshold. When teams can't move the ball at all, stuff starts to go sideways. I think Wisconsin's a better team than Iowa. I've thought that for a while personally. I think Iowa may get exposed a little bit in this game, frankly, by Wisconsin. And I don't think Wisconsin's a bad team just because they lost that one game to Illinois. So that's why I think it's probably a 24-3 game, not all that far off from the model. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. Sorry we couldn't give you a longer video, but we tried to do what we could. If you like it, subscribe, give us that thumbs up. It helps us a lot. Let us know what you think in the comment section about the score in this game and how it's going to go. Let us know what you think is the better defense in this game. Do you think it's Iowa? Do you think it's Wisconsin? Do you disagree with our model that thinks that Iowa is more a product of bad offenses than it is good defense? And then also, we've said this a lot this week, but if you're listening to us in an audio-only version and you're on a podcast, go ahead and give us a review. Give us some 5 stars, and especially if you can leave a comment, just to let us know, if nothing else, that you're out there and you're listening and you like our content, because we know people have it set to auto-download sometimes, but we have no idea how many people are listening. And the more traction we can get on there, the more we know that that's something we need to focus on in the future, because right now, we don't have much of an indication that a lot of you are actually listening on audio only. All right, thanks a lot, guys, and God bless.